Welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. If you enjoy our content, please like or subscribe.
Hi, welcome to Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have things you need to get done around the house? Maybe some construction projects? Check out K&H Construction. Chris Helms out of Waxahachie, a local guy. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. So today, my very special guest is Mrs. Sylvia Villasenor, who is an author of 2 books about growing up as with one of 6 children, right, Ms. Villasenor? And
7.
with
It's
7,
Yeah.
with a father who was widowed. And she talks about the experience of all that in her books. Thank you so much for coming on, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
I saw I ran across that bio and I was like, wow, I love when people put their stories to paper. So tell me, kind of give me a little brief overview and then we'll talk about how you came to these books and what they're about.
Well, I'm the youngest of 7. My family came to the States in the mid-50s. They immigrated from Jalisco, Guadalajara, Mexico. And my dad was here a year before. He settled in. He had a brother that had already been living here. But before he moved here, he was a musician in Mexico. And after he had 5 kids, my mom didn't like the idea of him playing at bars in the middle of the night. So it shows that it was time to switch gears. And being that he didn't like anything else that would be available to him, he had a brother here and asked him if there was an opportunity for him to move and make a life. And my uncle Jesse said, sure. So he moves here first. And he worked basically as a busboy. And then it was at a Mexican restaurant. So he was quickly advanced to a waiter. And it just all kind of made sense to him. He enjoyed it. So he made good money. Within a year's time, he had already immigrated, my mom and my 5 siblings. They moved here like in 1956. So I had a sister. My sister Luby was born in December of 57. And I was born in February of 59. The 4 months later, my mom unexpectedly passed away of appendicitis. I guess she wasn't taken in early enough. So that was a big shock to my dad because he was left alone with 7 children in California. He didn't know the language very well, but he got around, and it was LA. So it was a big opportunity to work with a bunch of Hispanic people and didn't have to worry about having to learn English that quick. But he had my grandmother here, his mom, because she was staying with my mom, helping her out after I was born, and then that happened. So what started happening, being that she was at the LA County Hospital, social services started knocking on the door, making sure that there was always someone at home taking care of the children while he was at work. The oldest was 12 years old, and then I was the youngest at 4 months, and everybody else in between was in between those ages. So it got to the point with my grandma said, I can't stay here. I have to go back. I have my house to attend and what have you. So
Right.
my dad said, well, what am I going to do with the children? So there were people wanting to, like friends of my mom's that she had met that didn't have kids and others that only had a few, they wanted to adopt us. So her mom was very upset because she couldn't even come to the funeral. So she recommended that we all move to Guadalajara so that they can look after us while he was working. And the dollar went a lot further down there because I think at the time it was like 12.50 pesos per dollar. So we would be taken care of in the hometown that they grew up in. The small town in the suburbs of Guadalajara, the municipal of Zapopan. So it was not quite the city yet. Now it's all connected. But it was isolated enough where it was a small town. The whole families in that town knew everyone. Just by looking at your face, they could tell what family you belonged to. So they knew what had happened to my mom. So the town was very embracive. Once my dad said, yeah, I think that's the best thing to do. That way he could kind of get his life back in order because he was totally in shock. So when we moved to Guadalajara, I was, I think, 5 or 6 months at the time. And I stayed with his mom. And then the other 6 stayed with my mom's mom. But it was only like a 3-minute walk. The town's not very big. We still have our houses there where my mom grew up. We got to keep that real estate. And behind that house was the house that my mom had purchased when she got married with my dad, because it was right behind her mom's house. So they opened up the door that way the two can connect.
Oh, wow.
And my maternal grandma could help out, plus a sister that never got married. So my sisters, the older ones, were already close to them. So to them, it was healing to go back home and be with the familiar environment, with family, friends, cousins. I mean, we were a big family. And I grew up there till I was 5, and I had a wonderful time there, wonderful life for a child at the time. Kindergarten, you were able to go into kindergarten at the age of 3 as long as you were potty trained. And I think I stayed there like till my 3rd year of kindergarten. And then we came back here to the States when I was 5, going on 6. I think we came back in 1965. 1965. So, oh my God. My God. We're talking about a small town with short streets. Of course, it didn't seem like it was that way when you're there. But once we moved and we went back to visit, we realized how really small that town is, but it was quaint. Everything revolved around the church. Everyone was like family. Everyone knew that we were my mom's children, and they were very kind and helpful. We had a lot of love. And I started school. It was just a lot of fun. And then we had to leave all that and come down here. And what a culture shock. The streets were humongous. It took like 4 blocks to walk to school. And it was like we had walked the whole downtown area down there. And I was in kindergarten, didn't speak a word of English. And at that time, from the kindergarten to the 4th grade, they didn't have ESL, English for I guess, exactly. They didn't have it. So what they did, if you were 4th grade or younger, they assigned you to a Hispanic-speaking child that was going to be your interpreter. That's all we got.
Yeah, that's how they did it back then.
Terrible. So the first 4 years, I was totally lost. I just felt so dumb. I just felt like I didn't belong. I had a few Hispanic friends, but the other people, the kids, were way ahead of me. They didn't have any patience for anyone. And they decided that I should retake the 4th grade, kind of stay back and catch up. So I felt bad at first, but then when this class came in and there were kids that were younger than me, kind of like the idea that I was the older person, I caught on and I started making friends. So that was a major plus. And my other sisters were going to high school. They had already picked up English from when they had lived here for the 3 years, but they were tired that they were helping my dad out. They were kind of like taking care of us, like we were their kids. And they really didn't have like a teenage life. It was just moving so fast for my dad. And he didn't know what hit him. I mean, we were 7 back and he was going crazy. He had gotten married. The lady didn't last very long. I think 6 months after we came back, she moved out and never came back, which is okay.
Wow. So he had gotten remarried and he had a life. He brought you and
Came back
she was like, nah, I'm not dealing with these girls and I'm out.
The funny thing is that she was the one that suggested that we all came back.
Okay.
That he should bring us back, that it was time. Because at the time, in the small town that we're from, the girls were getting married. As soon as they turned 15, they would have their quinceañera and they could have a boyfriend. By the age of 17, 18, they were getting married. If they were 20, 21, they were considered old maids. And my dad didn't want that for us. So he figured he'll bring us back. But reality hit for our stepmom, and she says, I can't handle it. And she left. And we were happy. He wasn't, but we took the house.
What was your dad doing at this time? Like now, years later, he's got a house for you guys. What was he doing at that time?
Well, actually, at the time, he didn't have a house for us. He had been renting. When I was born, they were renting from this really sweet Black couple that basically became my dad and my mom's mentor. And they helped my dad out. I think they even helped them with some airfare to fly us to Guadalajara when my mom passed away. When we came back, I got to spend some time with them because she would invite us over for dinner. Her name was Martha. And I don't remember her husband's name, but we stayed in touch until they passed away. That's how close we were to them. But my dad was renting homes that he could afford, and they were beat up homes that had issues. The first house was really nice. It was a 2-story. We had the top story and then 2 elderly couple lived downstairs, and the lady was ill. And we were up there dancing the Mexican folk dances, stomping on the floor. And the guy said, "You need to move. My life can't take."
Yeah.
So after 4 months, he had us move, and we went to a house that was behind a 4-apartment building that was beat up. It did leak when it rained, and it was what he was able to afford, and we dealt with it. Well, a year later, the guy didn't like it. It's too many of us. We had to move again, so we kept moving.
Oh, no.
Then we moved to another place in Kenmore that was also a house. But my sister, the older one, had gotten married. So her husband came here from Guadalajara. And it kind of was a plus because he went to work and started helping out with the household.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, we were in one room at that house. We were, I think, 3 girls in a bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, girls, and then because Espe was already with her husband. So we were piled up like sardines, but it was fun. We just made the best of whatever we had to work with. And my
Yes.
brother was always on the couch. He didn't like sleeping with my dad. So basically, he had to leave that house too because the owner asked for it since his son was getting married. And he finally said, "I'm buying a house." He had a stable job, and Jaime did too. So they both qualified for the house. And we moved to 12th Street in 1968. And it was finally our home. Nobody kicked us out. I stayed there till I was 25. I went to college, and he let us stay there. He retired and moved to Guadalajara. So my brother and I stayed there. Everybody else was married with kids. I saw what happened to them as a kid, watching them get married so young, having babies while they were still teenagers. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not going to do that. I want to go to school. I want to go to college. And if anything goes wrong, I'll be okay as a single parent if that's what would happen to me.
Tell me about, real quick, because there's always a difference between the kids that were born here versus the kids that were born there and immersed more in that culture and the kids that were immersed in this culture. Now, you went back, but in general, there tends to be a little bit of a difference that I've seen in life. So the other ones wanted the traditional. They wanted get married, have kids, have a family. Nothing wrong with that. Did your two that were closer, did you guys want both the ones that were, you guys wanted school and stuff like that? Or it was you and your brother that wanted school?
My brother and I that wanted it. My sister Lupe, that's a year older than me, we would spend our summers in Guadalajara. And she ended up having a boyfriend there that she fell in love with. And she ended up getting married to him, didn't even finish her senior year at high school. So she sold everything she had and left at the age of 17 because, you see, she skipped a grade. She skipped a grade. It was at the time when we were in grammar school. It wasn't like the whole year in the first grade and the second grade. It was from September to January. It was like A1. And then from January, I guess, to June, it was B1. And then you start the second grade that way. Yeah. So the reason why I had to redo the fourth grade is because they were giving the parents the opportunity to keep their kids behind if they weren't doing well in school. And those kids that weren't doing well in school, of course, I got a note. My sister Lupe got a note. And that's when they decided that the teacher suggested that we both stayed back. Well, Lupe was kind of crazy. She didn't even show my dad the letter. She just signed his name, which we were all good at doing his signature. And she went ahead.
I didn't do that. I never did that.
She did all the time. Well, Berna wanted to get married to her. Berna had the money because he was like 4 years older than her. And he was from our hometown, but he became a professional soccer player. They signed him up. And he made the team. So he was making money, and she thought, what do I have to lose? I'm going to be okay. And my dad didn't mind with her. He put with everybody else, but with her, he just sent her on a silver platter. And I said, how dare you do that to me? I was barely having fun partying with you and your friends.
Yeah.
So it was just my brother and I. And then I was helping my older sisters take care of the kids on the weekends if they wanted to go away for the weekend with their husbands. I would go ahead and stay with their kids, and I got to basically get really close to them. And they weren't that much older than me because I'm the youngest. I had my first nephew when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Start from there. So, I mean,
How did Dad function with all you back and just going through the day-to-day grind? What was that relationship like with your dad? Because it sounds like you and your sisters and your brother made the best of it. But did that change the relationship with your dad? How was that?
it was hard because when he would spend a week or two in Guadalajara, it was easy because he was just there 2 weeks. He spoiled us. He was the sweetest man. And then he would come here. But when we moved down there, he started stressing out because the marriage was not doing well. And then he lost his job. I think he was managing some company where they did air conditioning. And one of the guys in his unit got hurt, and my dad got blamed for it. So they automatically let him go. And we had just been here 8 months. So he had a hard time with that, and he didn't know what to do. The lady left him. And then that's when we ended up getting that really old home behind the apartments. We didn't even get near him. Everybody was afraid of him. Where we got it was he used to say that we're going to have dinner, all of us together, blah, blah, blah. The dinner table was the worst because all he did was complain, make us feel uncomfortable to the point where when you're a kid, you get scared. You can't get close to someone like that. I mean, I was 6 years old. I'm eating. I could feel like I'm chewing and I could feel it on my throat. Like I can't even swallow. And I'm sorry, but his mom raised me. And she was like the total opposite. So at the time, I think she was there with us still because she was the one that came to bring us, and she stayed with us as long as she could, because she didn't want to leave me behind. She was so used to me. But she would even get upset, but she couldn't say anything. She would just apologize. And then I kept telling her, when you leave, I want to go back with you. I want to go back with you.
Yeah.
When it came the time for her to leave, my dad said, no, Mom, it was a big sacrifice. And I spent a lot of money bringing them here. Why am I going to let her leave? She leaves, everybody else is going to want to leave too. He goes, and he did have a plan. He says that he knew how life was down there. They didn't want us to get married young. And then he saw how a lot of young couples ended up staying with one of the parents, and the homes were not that big to have the siblings bring in their spouses. He goes, I don't want that for my kids. I want them to live a better life. They're all girls. If something goes wrong, they'll be able to make it on their own. That was his plan, but at the time we hated it because we hated being here. It was homeless for us down in Mexico. It was a small town. It was unique. It was, I mean, come on, you're walking down the streets. All these women, they were homebodies. You could smell everybody cooking a different dish, and it just smelled good. In the morning and in the afternoon, the main meal was at 2 to 4. And then the evenings, you just started at 6. You went out, and there were all kinds of stands selling foods. You'd be back by 9, and the day was over. And here you come, and you're locked up, and you've got a man that's vicious. He doesn't know what to do with 7 kids. The older ones he could deal with because I think they grew up with him. And they say that the first 5 years of your life is when you have that bonding with the individual that's raising you. I didn't have it. I left when I was 5, 6 months old. So when I came back, I don't think he felt much for me and Loopy or my brother Tony.
Really?
We didn't even get close to him. He scared me. And it's sad because then you miss that bond and you don't trust the guys when you start dating. You don't have that trust. And it takes you a long time to decide. You always have it now. There's something wrong with that. That reminds me of my dad. And forget that. It was hard. So if you raise your daughters in a point where that your dad loves you, you stand a better chance trusting men too. That's what I realized.
he only knew, and it sounds like he was old school. He only knew authority. That was what he knew the best. And when he had to actually day to day with you guys, he thought that maybe the ruling by fist was probably better than anything else.
Well, he didn't use the fist. He used the mouth.
Right.
He didn't like to hit us. But there were times when just the meanness in his voice and the cussing in Spanish, I'd rather have him give me one slap in the butt or something. He never hit us in the face. But the few times that he hit us, he would cry.
Oh,
And then
wow.
he would give us a long speech. Well, I don't want to hit you, blah, blah, blah. And it'd be like for 5 minutes. And I would think, just hit me already, okay?
Just give me the chancla and let's go. We don't need, just give me
Not
the
even.
chancla. Just handle it.
Just one
Yeah.
big hard smack. And then he would start crying. And then I would think, what's wrong with him? I'm okay with
Yeah.
that.
So he give
But
you
he had it hard.
it hurt me more than it hurts you,
It's you.
but
That's right.
it kind of speech. And so he dealt with dealing with raising all these daughters, and it sounds like there was a good heart in there.
Yeah.
If you're crying because you had to swat your kids, there's something in there.
He
But
loved us. He loved us.
how did that relationship kind of blossom when you started getting into your adulthood?
I didn't like him. I didn't like him. I was resentful towards him because we never had a bond. We never had a bond. I knew that from watching how my older sisters dealt with him, he wanted us to always have a part-time job because, come on, you had 7 kids, the household, whatever, food. If you worked and you made $50 a week, you gave them 20 and you kept the other. So that's how he taught us to be responsible. So I knew that as soon as I would get a job, which I did at the age of 14, I lied about my age because you had to be 16 to get a work permit. Luckily, my sister at Belmont High School worked at the work permit office. So she says, I'll get you a work permit so you could work this summer. So I think I was making $50 a week and I would give him 20 and keep 30. And he was totally fine with it. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt good about it too, because I knew that I don't care what he used it for. He used to love to gamble the horses.
Oh.
He went to Santa Anita Santa Anita place, and then the one in Hollywood that they closed that down to make the SoFi, whatever stadiums there. But we knew that that was something that he enjoyed doing. So if he used the money for that, we didn't care because he was enjoying himself. He did have his girlfriends that he went out with, and we didn't care because they were really nice to us when they came for like the holidays and stuff. And I don't think I ever met a Mexican lady that he dated. They were all from South and Central America.
Okay, Dad. All right, Dad.
They were friendlier and easier. I think us Mexican women were so strict. We're like, no, you can't do that. Like
they gave him the leeway. They gave him the leeway, right?
And we didn't care because they were fun to hang out with. And in the part of LA that we were from, I remember at school, there were a lot of us Hispanics, and I thought most of the kids were Mexican because when we spoke Spanish, they spoke with this Mexican accent. But then when they would invite me to their homes, it was either from El Salvador, it was from Costa Rica, it was all of Central and South America. I think Mexicans were the minority. It was Koreatown where I grew up. So basically, I got to meet all these people from the different parts of Central and South America. And we really bonded together. It wasn't just Mexicans like in East LA. So it was just a nice treat that I was so open to. I worked with them. I went to school with them. We had each other's back when we had to walk to school and back. So it was just a nice experience when it came to that aspect.
I spent my first 10 years in New York, and I had a similar kind of growing up in Queens. I alternated between Brooklyn and Queens, wherever mom could afford, because it was just her. And I had that experience where you had all these, because it's New York, so you had all these different cultures there, all these different people, and all these different foods that go with it. And I was always happy with that because I love some good food. But that experience with your pop and everything, you're growing up, you're losing your mom early, and the effects that has. You went out and you said, okay, I want to go to college. I want to make something. I want to do something. Tell me about life after.
Actually, I had a boyfriend, George. Since we were 14 years old, but I told him that I couldn't bring him to my house till I turned 15. So the week after I turned 15, I said, you come over on your bike, because he had a 10-speed. And my dad's going to be working outside in the garden because that's what he did on the weekends. And I said, and you ask him permission to be my boyfriend, otherwise you can't come over. So he goes a week after I turned 15, and I was at the door, and here comes George on his 10 speed, and my dad's wondering, who's this guy? So he goes, hi, with this broken Spanish. He goes, I'm George, and I want to be your daughter's boyfriend. You give me permission. And I thought I was going to get pissed off because it's only been a week. So he starts laughing. And he turns around and he looks at me. He goes, ¿De veras, Silvia? Apenas la semana pasada cumpliste 15 años. ¿No te pudiste esperar?
Just turned 15. You couldn't wait. Like,
Yeah,
and like you were saying, 15 is the in the culture.
That's it.
It was,
He
so,
started
man, you
laughing.
didn't spend a minute of time, right?
Ages we were 14, and he would pick me up at the bus stop, and I'd get on the handlebars with no helmet, or I'd sit on the seat of the bike, and he'd stand up pedaling. It was just fun. And I always tell everybody that's kind of true love, because you have nothing to offer them other than each other's time.
Right.
So it's kind of like a great time to get to know someone. That didn't last. I didn't like that. My dad kept pushing me after I graduated from high school. When are you and George getting married? And then I said, it's not going to work with George, because he dropped out of high school. He did get involved with people that were selling drugs. And I got scared. It wasn't the way he raised us. Says,
Right.
I don't care if it would have just been a hardworking labor worker, but he wasn't. He had gone astray, and it scared me a lot. And I wanted to continue to go to school and go to college. So I broke up with him when I was like 18. And then I told my dad, I don't want to get married to George. And he kept pushing it. Why not? Why not? And I didn't want to tell him what George had gotten into. And then I said, why are you wanting me to leave the house and get married? I don't want to be like my sisters. A lot of them are unhappy. 2 of them got a divorce. One of them had to raise her 2 kids on her own until she remarried when the kids were older. The other one didn't have any kids. And just by watching what everybody was going through, I had started working when I was in the 12th grade at Bullock's Wilshire, which was, I'm sure Bullock's, right? The store Bullock's, you were here. It was like Macy's.
I'm not very familiar. Like Macy's, right?
Macy's took it over. But right. Bullock's Wilshire was a specialty store, and the building is a monument. Now, a law school bought it when they went out of business. I went there to get a part-time job for the summer, and I ended up at the department called the Playdeck, and this great Cuban lady took me under her wing. She was the buyer, and she loved the way that I worked. I had nothing else to do but work hard in the summertime, because we didn't have any money to do any extra curriculum for like summer camps or anything like that. Right. So I just went crazy, and I let all my energy. I was like size 4, I think, running up and down for the salespeople that needed clothes altered. It was a department where the clothes were for the elderly that traveled a lot. So by September, she goes, I know you're going back to school, but can you work here on Saturdays and during the holidays? And I said, yeah. So after I finished high school, she says, you go to college and I'll give you a part-time job here so you can pay for your tuition. So I went to the Fashion Institute thinking I wanted to be a buyer like her for 2 years. And then I said, no, it's not long enough. She goes, are you ready to go into the program? And I said, no, for the buyer's program where you start as an assistant and all that. And I said, no, I want to transfer to Cal State LA, get my bachelor's. I don't think an AA is going to get me anywhere. And that's what my dad said. I think you should get married. And I kept saying, why? He goes, because I met a lady with kids and she won't move in with me until you move out. And I said, really?
He was trying to, yeah.
I wrote a letter to my grandma, his mom, and 2 weeks later, he gets a letter from her. And she said, well, goes, you don't want Sylvia? You send her down here to me. She could finish school over here. How dare you put her behind to have a woman with kids move in? What makes you think that's going to work out? And I think it was already falling out. It didn't even last. So he went to me and he goes, you've learned a lot from my mom, haven't you? He goes, I'm going to retire. You and Tony could stay here. You finish school. I'm moving to Guadalajara.
No, he's going back, right?
So he went back and we stayed there because I think the payment was only $137 a month. My brother made the payment. I paid the bills, and he was going to Cal State with me because he wanted to become an accountant. And we both graduated December of 1985. we didn't walk because they didn't have like a walk at that time, and we didn't want to go back in June. But yeah,
You,
so that's what happened.
you. I mean, it's an immigrant story. It really is, and and then it has its own little layers with it being just your dad being a widower. What comes with that? When you have a single parent, they deserve happiness too. They want to be loved too, and then having to those different dynamics that come into play, because before they were your dad, he was a guy trying. And so it sounds like you went through all those dynamics. You ended up getting into real estate is what I read, and sort of the finance side of the house. And you kind of progressed like that in your career, in your life. Where in that did you say, what, I have to put my story or this story on paper and write Mama's Pearls?
Well, the part that I switched it to real estate, even though I did get a Bachelor of Science in Marketing, and it took me like 6 years to complete it because I was working 30 hours and going to school full time. And there were a few classes that I had to take over again because I had a hard time. But I did it. What happened was, what was your question again? I got distracted.
Oh, no, it's fine.
To write the book. That didn't happen. And I'll tell you when it happened. It was hard growing up without a mom.
Right.
When all my sisters moved out and my brother had moved out too on his own, for a while, it was just my dad and I. And we didn't have a rapport. It was hard. I mean, I got home, I cooked for the two of us. And sometimes he would say, I'm bringing a lady friend on Saturday for breakfast. Can you cook for her and her kids? And I would say, sure. But when I'm done cooking, now I'm talking about I was already 18, and I would still ask him permission. Can I go downtown with my friend Gina or whatever? Sure, no problem. They even bought me a car. That was really nice when I was 16, as soon as I got my license. So I would kind of like trade. I'll go ahead and cater to your girlfriends and their kids, but let me do this, blah, 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 because he always had to know where I was. So what happened was, knowing that I didn't have the rapport with him, I was happy when he left, and it was just my brother and I felt independent, but at the same time, he had already molded us so much that I knew that if I went out and I could probably not come back till 6:00 in the morning or 10 if I stayed at a friend's house, he wasn't there anymore. But I never did that. I was home by like 2:00 because I knew that I had to work the following morning. And I kept telling myself, are you dumb? Just go have fun. Tony doesn't care if you don't spend the night. Stay with this friend, stay with that friend. But I couldn't. I just liked being home, and that felt good. And I liked being available for my sisters if they needed me to babysit their kids when they went away and had fun with their spouses. But I would be lonely a lot at night because it was just my dad and I. And sometimes life got hard. It wasn't easy. I had work, I had school. For a long time, I didn't have a boyfriend. I just had friends that we went out a lot. And I kind of miss having a relationship like the one that I had with George. I wanted something like that. It didn't come that easy. Those come once in a great while. It happened again when I met my husband at Cal State, but I was way far ahead. So I would fall asleep crying. I would fall asleep crying to God saying, I want to go home with my mom. I want to go home with, I felt it. I felt the pain. And there were times when I would feel something really warm in my stomach, like somebody was trying to calm me down. And I had started going to a Christian church when I was 22. So I had a Bible with me, and that was the only thing that would calm me down. Just getting reacquainted with God, because the Catholic Church, you go there and you criticize.
Omni Domni. Do the Omni Domni and you're good. Yeah.
But that God took me back at 22 and said, "Nuh-uh, you're mine. I'm going to take you in and put you in the right church." And it was a Christian church where there were a bunch of Jewish people, believers in Christ. So I said, okay, I know this is the right one. I know this is called Beth Ariel. So I just stuck to it. But it wasn't until I got married with my husband that I met at Cal State LA, and he kind of had a similar upbringing. So we were friends for 5 years before he started going out. He was living with a girl, and I didn't even like him. He was from New York, Jewish guy from New York. He was nasty. We're wearing all these T-shirts at Cal State LA with weird things. And I'm like, Cliff, how could you put that on? I mean, come on, we'll go with it.
It was the 70s, to be fair. It was the 70s.
The 80s. It was the 80s.
Oh, was it 80s already?
Yeah, it was the 80s. I graduated in 77. Then I went to the Fashion Institute. I finished in 79, and then I transferred to Cal State, and it took me 6 years. So I graduated.
The 80s. But you were in the middle of the 80s. Things were kind of weird anyway.
They were weird. They were still the leftovers from the 70s, but it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And we just were good friends at Cal State LA. And then he left to go to chiropractic school, but we stayed friends. And then I graduated, but we stayed in touch because we were around the same circles on the weekends. And I just was never attracted to him. I just liked him as a good friend because I knew that I could tell him everything. And him being from New York, I was like, oh, no big deal, no big deal.
Yeah, right.
Somebody else from Guadalajara would say, what the heck is wrong with this girl? So
right.
It was comfortable. It was comfortable. And then when I graduated, I think he started to get serious with me. Then I said, no, this is too hard. I don't know that I could switch a friendship to a boyfriend. Took me a while, but eventually after 6 months, I gave in. And after a year, we were married. And I started having children. So when I had my first, it was quick.
It kind of goes that way, huh?
And the good thing is that the mom had got married twice, and her second husband was from the West Indies. He was Black. So she was totally comfortable with me.
Right.
So totally comfortable with me not being Jewish. And my dad didn't care. He was just happy that I got married at the age of 30. He was just happy. Right. And then when I had Joy, my oldest daughter, I started thinking a lot about my mom. And I started to think how scary it would be for the same thing to happen to me. For me to have my daughter and something that happened to her would happen to me in a different way that I couldn't control. But then I would think, it's in God's hands. He knows what he's doing. I can't live this way. Then I had my second son, then I had my third son. And that was my biggest fear, to pass away, because then I would think, how did she feel in her dying bed? She went into the emergency, and here they tell her that it was too late. My dad kept telling her, you just have a pain. It's got to be, just don't worry about it. It's got to be from your last pregnancy. And then he takes her in, and her blood had already turned in sepsis, whatever they call it. And that was it. It was done. I mean, that was 1959. So they told her that she was just going to stay here, and they were going to keep her until she passed away because she didn't have much time.
Wow.
So thinking about it, what I did was, I know when I had my kids, I would see them as my precious pearls. So then I thought, my God, we must have been her precious pearls that she was probably thinking about in her deathbed, knowing that her time had been cut short. And I think she lasted like maybe overnight, and then she passed away in the morning. So that's why I went ahead and I named that book Mama's Pearls, with the hand of a woman and the necklace hanging down. There's 7 pearls plus my dad, 8. So I'm thinking, is this necklace of pearls where she's got to let go because her time here is done. And I started thinking about it once I was a mom, and I was so busy working in real estate, doing loans. I really, with the Hispanic community, helping them get their loans for the homes that they never thought they qualified for, that I didn't spend a lot of time with my kids. I had a live-in babysitter from El Salvador that was a refugee here because they were having problems at the time. And she was the best one out of all the ones that I had. And I think, and that just scared me. So I would like write at night. It's just kind of like a notebook to calm me down. And it wasn't until I retired that I decided that I needed to write, because I had too much in my head. And I needed to write my story so that my sisters would see how I viewed everything that happened as a child. And I wanted to leave something for my kids so that they could see where my upbringing was, because they knew that my mom had passed away, but they were happy-go-lucky. They were living a good life. I was making good money. Cliff was making good money, and they didn't like anything. And that's what I sacrificed me getting married early for, thank God, that I just wanted to have them had what I didn't have. You spoiled them
Right.
extra. So basically, I decided to just write it all on paper, and I did a small, like a booklet type of thing, just to soak my toes in. And everybody liked it better in Spanish than in English. But even the people that read the English one, they liked it too, because I included pictures of the families,
Oh, that's
starting
cool.
from when we were in Mexico, when I was an infant and stuff. But then I thought, no, I want somebody to help me rewrite it better, so that it just looks more professional, have a better cover, and present it to the world, because just to the world here in the US, because it is the world. Everybody that's
Mm-hmm.
that's an immigrant here could relate to it. It's not just my
Mm-hmm.
story. And it's
Right.
got a plot twist, because I mean, how many stories do we have where family moves in, then the mom passes away, leaves 7 kids and a husband, and
And a
all
dad.
of the time it's the mom being left behind. So I thought somebody's gonna learn from this. And it's just a nice gift that I have for my grandchildren too. I have 2 granddaughters, one's 5 and one is 2. I mean, who writes down what they lived through once they move here? Nobody does. A lot of the times your kids don't even know what you went through, because they
And
were
it all
raised.
stays in here. Right.
Yeah. And I said,
It all stays in here.
as embarrassed as I might be, or how raw, because it's pretty raw. I didn't sugarcoat anything. It was my life wasn't sugarcoated. So I left it that
Mhm.
way. And then I thought, I don't know how people are going to take it, but I've gotten really good reviews when I did the press release on it.
How did writing that book help you maybe understand your dad, or maybe even get to the point of forgiveness, in a sense, for things that you hadn't forgiven? How
That's a good
how
question.
did the book bring you there?
Well, I'll tell you, I wanted to talk him down in that book for my sisters, but he put everybody through. But in the end, people that were reading it, they were seeing him as a hero. And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm missing something here. And I'm old enough to realize that maybe what I'm thinking is wrong. So rereading the book, the first one and the second one, in a way, he was the hero. Because from the beginning of him moving here, knowing that the music business wasn't cutting it anymore with his kids and all, and he knew that he didn't have an education other than the music business, that he'd have a better opportunity here for us too. And he didn't want a life for his girls to get married at the age of 15, 16 and end up in somebody else's house in the same town, just all piled up together. So that took a lot of nerve and a lot of guts. And come here to a place where he didn't understand the language. Luckily, there's a lot of Hispanics here, so I think that might have made it easier. And yeah, he was frustrated. A man with 7 children, who wants to date him? Maybe just some ladies for fun, but don't take me to your house and meet your family, because honestly, just take me out to dinner or whatever. And he did that a lot, but a lot of them were curious to meet us too.
Mm-hmm.
So now that I think about it, I feel bad for how I felt towards him. And as a mom, I mean, I had my husband help me raise the kids, and he's been a great dad. Been a great dad. I think he's a better dad, more patient than I am a mom, because I work long hours and stuff, and I could feel the anger when the kids wouldn't settle down to go to sleep and stuff. And my husband was always but he still is, and they love him. I think that if they told him either your mom or your dad lives, who do you want to live? They'd probably say their dad.
Right.
You know, he's such a good Jewish dad that I now that I think of my dad, I'm like, okay, we never got close, you and I, but you did the right thing. You brought us here. We had better opportunities for what was available then. And Mexico's changed. A lot of women are professionals now, but we weren't going to be that. We weren't going to be that in the 60s. We were in a small town, wanted our familiar environment. You fall in love with the people that live next door to you on the next block or close to the church or whatever. We were going to end up being there regardless. So his dream was to bring us here and become independent, and he accomplished it. We didn't see it because he was hard to get close to, but I see it now.
There's something Sylvia, I'm sorry to interrupt, but was there something when you were writing this that you were like, I can't put that in there. I just can't put that in there. And you ended up putting it there anyway.
I did.
But you
I did.
struggled. You struggled. Was there anything like that?
Yeah, there was. There was. I wanted to put my dad down just so that people could see the type of man he was. And I know that he gave my mom, he gave her a hard time. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
she had 5 kids. She wasn't it was a 10-year difference between him and my mom. And I think she was probably my height. You know, we're all skinny. She was a little twig, worked really hard. After 5 kids, she had gained weight. He was working at the bars, meeting different women, and the buses that went to our town stopped at 11 o'clock at night. So he had to rent a room downtown close to where he was working because there were 3 different bars. They called it, I think, Las Nueve Esquinas. So there were 3 bars there, and then he'd have a room. And my mom would go meet him in the morning to spend some time alone with him. And one time, she found him with a lady. And she got mad and wanted to fight the lady. And the lady was ready to kill my mom. And my dad stopped it. But that's when my mom said, it's too much. We're going to divorce if you don't change your life. And my grandma said, no, he's moving to Los Angeles and change his life. His mom was totally with my mom. She was such a great mother-in-law from what I hear. These are all stories.
Right.
So basically, all these stories too. And then when they moved here, my sisters would say that he was mean to her, that he was rude, that he would hit her here in LA, and she didn't have the backup of her family. It was just her and the kids. I wasn't born yet, but the older girls could see it. And he just didn't have the patience because he was probably already dating somebody over here. He was a good-looking man. He wasn't bad looking at all. By the time I got older, I didn't think that he was that great looking, but I've seen pictures of him this young. And then he was old. But my older sisters got to see all that. So I had that extra anger against him for saying things to her and for hurting her, knowing that she had been such a big support to him and such a great mother. And then when I got married on my wedding day, we were at the reception and he comes up to me and he says, I just have one advice to you. And I said, okay. And I thought, wow, he's never been offered anything. So then he says, what kills a relationship is you having a lot of children. So try to avoid that. That was his advice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Oh, I thought, what a MF.
Yeah.
I know I love your mom, but that's how cold he was. He had no filter. And I put that in the book. And I put that he hit my mom and he cut her hair one time that she kept asking him to take her to get her hair done. So she had braided it. She fell asleep and he went and he cut her hair on his own. So he was not a nice guy. And my sisters witnessed all this. But yet at the same time, the older ones were very supportive of everything they had to do. Well, we were all here together. And they had to leave all that behind because you can't live a life with a man like that thinking about what he had done to your mother. But I was angry. I was angry and I was not nice to him. But I love his mom. She raised me. And
in this whole story, did the memory of a person you never knew that you could remember, did your mom in this whole story of your life, did she play a role that now you could look back and say, yeah, Mom, I know you were there on that one?
I can't pinpoint. All I can tell you is that there's been times here at this house where I've had my grandchildren because I've retired, and right away I had my first grandchild that's now she's 5. And then I have another little girl that's her sister that's 3. But I said, I want to be like my grandma. I want my grandkids to know me the way that I knew my grandma. I want to be that close. And also my mom's sister that never had kids, but she finished raising us too. And her brother. I wanted to be like them. And that's why I went on and I took that role. And there was one time when I was changing Kendall in Dean's old room. because that was her room. I had a crib and I had a Dean's bed, and I was just alone with her. And I saw a shadow of a lady with a brown dress walk by.
Hmm.
And I said, who is that? Is that Cliff's mom or is that my mom? And then when Kendall got a little older and she would take her naps on the bed, I sometimes would play with her, and then she would sit up and I was behind her, so I had her back, and I would see her go like this, like she was waving bye to someone. She
Wow.
was saying something. So I would get the chills and say, okay, Mom, are you here?
Right.
Oh, and
Are
then
you visiting?
I had a dream, 2 dreams of her. That's in the book. I think I was about maybe 7 or 8. That this happened twice. That 2 of my sisters and I went up to see her to heaven. I guess it was heaven, but it was a house that kind of looked like a Spanish house, a fountain. And we walked to the fountain and waited for her, and she ran out to greet us. And my sisters were like, this is Mom, hug her, kiss her. And I was shy because I was scared. So I was hiding behind their skirts, normal skirts that they used in the 60s, the teenagers.
Right.
And I was hiding behind it. And all she said was, leave her alone. She doesn't know me. And she just smiled at me. And then I had the same dream again, where it's the same house, same fountain. And she runs out, and this time she's shocked. She says, what are you guys doing here? And then the girl said, we just wanted to visit you. And she was wearing rollers. And then she goes, okay, but I can't stay long because we're having a dinner tonight, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
That was.
But I don't even know what to think of that. Maybe it's real.
What? Maybe. No, and I believe that some of those people stay with you in some way, shape, or form in their memories and stuff. But she left when you were so young, and I wonder how that dynamic went. But I could speak to you all night, but we're coming close to the end. When you look at this book, what do you want people, because you're telling your story to the world, and there's always a purpose behind these things. You sound like a person of purpose. You're in that purpose part of your life. What did you want people to get out of that book when they read it?
Not to sugarcoat anything, because people don't learn from it. Just be real, because people are living it. I don't know how this country's changing, if this is going to turn out to be a second world country and then we have to migrate back to Mexico or somewhere else. I don't know what's going on. But, I mean, it's just like, tell the truth and be honest about it. As bad as you think people are going to say, oh my God, how embarrassing. How dare she write this? You'd be surprised how people embrace it, because if they could relate to it, it wasn't easy for them either. And if they see that someone's being real about what she lived, and I mean, I got a memory from when I was 3 years old. I don't know why, but I have it. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. All this stuff really happened. And my older sisters say, well, I think you're exaggerating. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, probably am, but don't forget, you're seeing what I wrote in the eyes of a child. And you guys never bothered to explain things to me when Sheila, Tony, Loopy, and I would think what a jerk my dad is. And you would just say, just stay away from him. Just stay away from him. Come on, that didn't make it. I'm not sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you how I felt. And they got to see it, and they were a little in shock. But after thinking about it and me talking to them, they realized that, yeah, she's probably right. We were all busy with our lives, that we weren't there trying to heal their wounds. We were just saying, just lick them yourself, because we were young and we wanted to live. And that's
Right.
exactly what happened. We had to lick our own wounds.
Right.
And,
yeah, it was very different times where you had to do that. And it sounds like your dad didn't sugarcoat things to you either. I mean, that comment at your wedding was wild. So that, I'm sorry, that was now when you get to now that you've written this book, if you could sit across your pop after you've written this book, the person that you are after that experience, what would you say to him now?
I don't know. I would probably wait for him to talk to me first, because in that book, I had already basically wrote everything that I wanted him to know. But I would wait for him to see what he would have to say to me. My brother had a dream about him, I think. Or was it when he got married? My dad my dad was still alive and he got married to a girl from our hometown. So they got married in Guadalajara and my dad apologized to him for everything that he did to my brother. He was cruel. Because Tony, my brother, was skinny. He wasn't like the big, like me. He looked more like the Chavez. And Tony didn't like sleeping with him because he kept saying, you got to get bigger. You got to gain weight. I'm going to have to get a guy to come fight you so that you learn how to fight. I mean, mean things.
Right.
So Tony, when he got older, he put a stop to it. Man to man, you're not going to do it to me anymore. So when he went to Tony's wedding, he apologized for all that.
Wow.
And then I thought, a lot of stuff to apologize to me for at my wedding too. Why in the hell is it that when it comes to us women, these macho men just have stupid advice for us? Like we can't think straight is how I thought.
Right. Well, it's like, my bad. It's like, yeah, I didn't do macho. It was just because I grew up with a single mother mainly. My pop was part of my life. There were, and my wife says I should write the book of my story, but it's dad was in and out. And so mom kind of raised us. She went through the 80s and stuff with us. And so that experience of raising mom and that love and that stuff, that kind of kept that down, that Puerto Rican macho thing. It kind of kept it down a little bit.
So
because
you're
I
a
didn't
good dad
grow
to
up
your
like
daughter.
that. No, I would never say that. I say that because, and that's a whole nother story. When I came back from Iraq, I wasn't the same person. And she was a baby when I left. And when she came back, when I came back, she didn't know who I was. That
so you could relate to me.
Right. The stories are similar and the experiences, even though they were in different parts of the country, they're similar. Even though I'm not an immigrant, I came from Puerto Rico. It was all when you came to New York from Puerto Rico, it was an immigrant story in a way. It was just that you were a U.S. citizen, but you were still very poor. You were still trying to make it with everybody else. But anyway, I really enjoyed this conversation. I love people that have these experiences in life and they want to share it, and they want to share it just so they could put out a story that somebody can grab onto, because stories have a way of outlasting us. And maybe one day somebody's reading this 70 years from now and it's a story that they went through and it changes their life. But thank you so much for coming on. Can you stick around after the show?
Sure.